This video is going to talk about binary ionic compounds, and remember that we've talked about the two different types of compounds. Ionic is always going to be your metal and your nonmetal. Okay, so if we look at the definition here, since it's a metal and a nonmetal, it's positive and negative ions, and that's what causes. Ooh, I need a highlighter here. That's what causes the bond. Okay, is the positive and the negative ions. Binary means two. Okay, so bi means two, so that means we're going to have, again, one metal and one nonmetal. So we have that cation, again, that's positive. Remember, a T looks like a positive. Okay, so that's the cation, and then the anion is the negative. So that's what's going to give us that binary compound. Remember here again, your nonmetals all are in blue here. You can see that they're all on the right except for hydrogen. Remember that hydrogen is a nonmetal, and then all the ones in pink here are your metals. Okay, so we're going to take something from the left-hand side of the periodic table and bond it to something to the right-hand side. Once in a while you'll have hydrogen involved too. Just remember it's a nonmetal. Okay, so how do we identify these? Okay, again, binary means that there are two elements. One has to be a metal, one has to be a nonmetal because they're ionic. So those are the two things that you have to identify. Before you name any compound, you have to look how many elements are there, and then is there a metal and a nonmetal. To name these, okay, you just write the name of the metal down, and then the name of the nonmetal is second, always ending in IDE. Key thing to remember, the subscripts do not matter. Does not matter how many we have. We're writing the name of the metal down, and we're writing the name of the nonmetal with an IDE at the end. That's all you have to do to name these compounds. So if we have something like this, we would write down sodium chloride. Sodium is the name of the metal. It's the cation. Chlorine is the name of this, but we change the ending to IDE, and we have sodium chloride. Now you try this one. Pause the video for a second, write the name of this down, and then continue on. So we have calcium, which is the name of our cation or our metal. Bromine is the name of our nonmetal. We end with IDE, so we get calcium bromide. Here's another one. Pause and write down the answer of this one. This one again, potassium. And this is oxygen, so we have to make it oxide. So potassium oxide. So again, let's pause, write the answers down for these four, and then continue on to see the answers. Calcium, name of the metal. Fluoride. Sodium, this one's a little tricky because it's phosphorus, so it ends up being phosphide. That one's a little different. Sodium chloride we already did, and then strontium bromide. So fairly simple to name those. Now we're going to look at some compounds with polyatomic ions in it. Okay. So polyatomic ion, these are on the back of your periodic tables. Poly means more than one. So there's more than one atom put together, and they're ions, so they have a charge. So if we go back to a couple of chapters ago, ion always means there's a charge. So a polyatomic ionic compound is going to have a polyatomic ion in it. Okay, typically with a negative charge, because we've got our metal that's always going to come first. So metal, or the cation, positive charge comes first. Then we have this negatively charged polyatomic ion that has more than one atom in it. Okay, here's some common ones. Again, you have the chart on the back of your periodic table, so I'm not going to spend much time looking at these. So how do we identify these? Well, there's more than one element together. The only one that's positive is NH4. Okay, the rest of your polyatomic ions are going to be anions, or they're going to be the second part of your compound. Okay, the subscripts, or the little numbers, are important. They have to stay the same. You cannot change them. Okay, if there are parentheses around it, that means you have more than one polyatomic ion to balance out your charge, but at this point you ignore that number. Okay, all you want to do is name that polyatomic ion. Okay, so let's do a couple here. You name your metal, write down sodium, You name your polyatomic ion, and our polyatomic ion in this case are these right here. So you would look this up on your polyatomic ion chart. This is named nitrate. So we would write down sodium, and then we would write down nitrate. Okay, so now pause your video, look up. Remember, this is the one that's a positive polyatomic ion. The rest are all at the end. Do not worry about these numbers right now. Okay, all you want to do is look up the name of this and write it down. So write the name of your polyatomic ion, and here you would write down the name of your nonmetal with an IDE at the end. The rest of these, you write down the name of your metal and then the name of your polyatomic ion, or in this case, there's 2 polyatomic ions, write down those names. So go through these examples, and then when you're done, play and see the answers. Okay, so we've got sodium nitrate, we've got ammonium chloride, we've got calcium hydroxide, ammonium phosphate, and potassium carbonate. Okay, so really all you have to do with these is find them on your polyatomic ion chart and then name them. Okay, so how do we identify these types of compounds? There's going to be more than 2 capital letters. So there's going to be at least 3 different elements. Metal and a nonmetal at least. To name these, you write down the name of the cation, remembering that NH4 is a polyatomic ion named ammonium. The rest are all just going to be your metals that you look up on the periodic table. Then if your anion is a polyatomic ion, you just write down the name. That's all you have to do. And if your anion would happen to be a nonmetal, you end it in IDE just like we've been doing. Okay. So here's our first example. Write your answer down. In this one, you would write sodium, look up your polyatomic ion, and it would be nitrate. Second example, write down potassium, and then look up your polyatomic ion, and this is sulfate. Okay, so a lot of these you're just going to have to look it up because you don't know the names of them. Calcium, and then OH is hydroxide. Again, this number does not matter right now, just the name of the polyatomic ion. So calcium hydroxide. This one, remember your NH4 is ammonium, so this is a nonmetal, so you have to end it in IDE, so ammonium sulfide. Okay, so now pause your video and go ahead and write the names of these down. Okay, so we've got calcium nitrate, sodium phosphate, and remember again this is our ammonium, and this is hypochlorite. The ClO, it's not Ci, it's ClO, is hypochlorite. And then potassium carbonate. Ooh. Okay, now we're going to have to pause, and I'll make a second video for our multi-valent metals.